You're listening to the Augmented Experience podcast. My name is Joshua Velez. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down with fellow enthusiasts to talk about what's going on in the technology, business, and gaming world. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Velez. I'm your host as usual, and we have a special guest with us today. So why don't you go introducing yourself?
My name is Garrett. I'm a student here at Texas Tech.
Well, it's great to have you on the show, Garrett. I know it's my first time having a guest on the show, so this is something that is new for the both of us. So I'm just going to ask a few questions just so basically the audience can get to know you a little bit better. So what major are you doing in Texas Tech?
I'm doing a computer science major in the College of Engineering.
So basically since I'm doing computer engineering, he's basically doing the other portion, or specifically focusing on one half of my major, because computer engineering for us is basically a mix of computer science and electrical. So he's basically doing one half of that.
Right, but we go much more in depth on the programming and such.
Yeah, that's why I decided not to do that, because I suck at coding. So why'd you choose that major?
Well, my sophomore year in high school, I took this class called Web Technologies, Web Tech for short, and I was pretty good at it, and I liked it. And then the next year I took computer science, and the next year after that I took AP Computer Science, and I was like, oh, I like this, and I decided to major in it in college.
Basically, I kind of find it interesting because when you say that, and because we talked before, obviously before this, like me and Garrett have been getting to know each other for the past few weeks and months now, since the start of my freshman year. That it's interesting because in our GC group, me and Garrett kind of share a similar major, so it makes it a little bit easier for having a conversation. And that's mainly the reason why I also wanted to have Garrett on the show, because especially today's topic, when we get into it, is going to be interesting. But I just want to ask you one more question, Garrett. What do you like doing in your free time?
Well, I play a lot of video games. I also make sure to put specific time in the day to read my Bible, spend some time with the Lord, and then also I like to watch YouTube. I watch a lot of YouTube.
So, in basic summary, we're kind of similar in that sense that obviously, I haven't stated it on the show before, but that obviously, from time to time I will talk about my beliefs, and that's why, I'll go into a little bit later near the end portion of the show when I talk about something. But so today's topic, we're going to be talking about the state of mainstream gaming. So what is mainstream gaming to you, Garrett?
So mainstream gaming to me it's like the biggest companies, like the AAA companies. You got your EA, your Microsoft, Bandai Namco, Ubisoft, companies like that, the biggest companies in the business.
So yeah, we're mainly going to focus on them or more specifically, we're going to focus on 4 companies because they've been the ones that have been in the news more recently, whether it be good or bad things, but it's something that we need to discuss because these 4 companies, I would argue, are what define the mainstream gaming, especially since obviously they're some of the biggest companies around. So the companies we're going to be focusing on is mainly EA, Activision Blizzard, Bethesda, and Bungie. Now I know what you guys are thinking. Obviously 3 of those companies are very controversial right now because of some of the things they're doing. I think that's pretty straightforward and we have an idea why, but I feel like what's going on with those companies are going to be a telling sign of what could be the possible future of gaming itself, especially depending on where these companies end up going. Obviously, one of them specifically has a lot of potential, but we'll go into it. So we're going to start with EA because EA is kind of in a predicament right now because not only are their stocks dropping and most of their big titles are failing. Obviously, Battlefield 5 did poorly in sales, and obviously the CEO is kind of crazy just because they're blaming the failure of Battlefield 5 on the single player campaign, which I think me and Garrett can probably agree with that. That's just straight BS. You think, Garrett?
Yeah.
I think it has no correlation. Obviously, we know why it failed, and obviously we're going to talk about that because 3 of these companies are just, it's either go woke or go broke, and I think they're starting to realize that people just don't care about this stuff. we don't care if you pander to a specific type of people. Like, people don't care about that when they're playing video games. People care about the content of the game itself and making sure you produce a high quality product, because that's usually how consumers operate. Consumers, if they see something they like, they're going to pay for it, and if they don't, they won't. Obviously, EA's former executive took it a step further, and by saying some things to the consumers, basically saying if you don't like it, don't buy it, and well, people took them seriously.
Right. And really, whenever I look at games personally, I just want to play a good game. I don't care if the main character is female, male, transgender, whatever. I personally don't care. I just want to play a good game. When you look at games like, say, Smash Ultimate just came out recently. It has a huge roster of a whole bunch of characters. People don't. I mean, unless you're just casually playing, like when you look at what pros pick, they don't pick their characters based on who they are. They pick on their play style,
right.
And that is really what I look for in games. Also, I don't look for representation whenever I play. So whenever I see Battlefield 5, they're focusing on adding in female representation that's not historically accurate. I don't necessarily appreciate that.
Yeah, just adding on to it, like, I hope you guys understand that when Garrett says, like, it's not historically accurate, he's not saying that, just to defend, like, hey, we don't want women. No, it's just that people just don't like it when you add stuff out of the blue. Like, if it's random and it has no benefit to the game, like, then why add it? Like, I think that's kind of EA's big issue with Battlefield 5 was they were just trying to pander and not focus on making a good game for their hardcore audience. Their hardcore audience, they didn't really care about historical accuracy. I would make that argument. I think it was just the fact that it was random and it served no benefit, especially when they were pushing for telling untold stories, yet one of the stories that was untold, they manipulated it and changed it just to fit an agenda. Like, for the example, like the Commandos. They changed that story because those Commandos were all guys and they went into a Nazi base and basically took it down without firing a single bullet. But in the game, they changed it to a mother and a daughter, and they just went in John Rambo and destroyed the whole thing. Obviously, that's a sense of being historically accurate and misrepresenting an actual true untold story.
Right, and then they went on to say that it was historically accurate and it wasn't.
Yeah, I think that's also another thing that just shot him in the foot. However, when it comes to EA, recent development with Apex Legends is what makes this very interesting, because Apex Legends is a very interesting thing, especially because it's made by Respawn, and people really love Respawn because they made Titanfall 2. I would make the argument Titanfall 2 is one of the greatest games of the decade. I don't know if Garrett played it, if he played it at all.
Personally, I didn't play either of the Titanfall games.
Yeah.
That's mainly because I don't play console.
Yeah, that is true. That, just to say this, like, I'm assuming Garrett mostly plays PC. I'm assuming you do, or...
Yeah.
And then obviously, like, I do both because I have my PC and my consoles, but I mainly played consoles my whole life. So, when it comes to Titanfall 2, Titanfall 2 was very popular, yet EA shot themselves in the foot by making it release at the worst time possible, because they sandwiched it in between Battlefield 1 and Infinite Warfare. Obviously, the consumer is usually going to go for the safe bet with either COD or Battlefield, because at this point, Titanfall was untested and Titanfall 1 left a bad taste on people's mouths. Yet Titanfall 2 came around and it ended up being one of the greatest games, yet nobody played it that much. It's still very popular and it still goes on sale from time to time, and I would highly recommend it to anyone. But because of that, Respawn got bought by EA, yet EA gave them creative freedom to make Apex Legends. And Apex Legends is a free-to-play battle royale, so it's basically like Fortnite. The only difference is it's set in the Titanfall universe. The only difference is you're not having the Titans, and you won't have the super suits, so no wall running and stuff like that. But the movement speed is still really good, and you truly can feel it when you're playing on PC. And it's a very interesting thing because it's kind of the thing EA needed. They needed something to put them back in the good graces of the consumers. Obviously, their stocks say otherwise because, the consumers are still pissed at them for what happened with Battlefield 5 and things like that. But Apex Legends, I would make the argument that it could probably compete heavily with Fortnite. But I think its main competition is going to be with Activision's Blackout mode and for Black Ops 4. I think that's the main way to compare Apex to Blackout because they're very similar in more realistic tone and tight gunplay compared to Fortnite with building and more cartoonish art styles. But now that we talked about Activision, I think it's perfectly fine to go into them because they're not doing so hot either. And I think Garrett mainly wants to talk about this one, especially because he loves Overwatch. So I'm going to let Garrett take this one.
Right. When it comes to Activision Blizzard, with Bungie recently splitting from them, inheriting Destiny, the Destiny franchise all by themselves.
And we'll get to that very soon as well. So
right. But just looking at how Activision has influenced Blizzard since they joined in 2008, it's really interesting because before Activision was Activision, right? So they had microtransactions in their games, a lot of them, which wasn't always, it's not the case for every game, but for several games it was. And then whenever they joined with Blizzard, they influenced Blizzard to start doing the same. That's why you see loot boxes in Overwatch, and there's a lot of microtransactions in WoW now, and just stuff like that you can see.
Yeah, just a little clarification. When he says WoW, that's referring to World of Warcraft. So obviously, I'm assuming most of us know what World of Warcraft is. Very popular MMO game for PC only, and it's been that way for many years now. So that just adding on to it. And when we go into the Overwatch stuff, this is where I'd argue it's gotten a little worse because now we're in the direction of go woke or go broke. And obviously this applies to Battlefield 5, but I think for Overwatch this is where it applies the most because some decisions that they decided to do out of the blue. Like obviously the whole thing with Soldier 76, like just randomly turning him gay. No one has a problem that he's gay. It's just people's main problem with it is that it was random. It was never hinted at in the story, which obviously people can bash Overwatch, and I don't think it should have won Game of the Year at all. Like it shouldn't have. The fact that it was just random, it had no place in the story, or I'd argue that it just didn't make sense. It just popped out randomly and they just did it just to pander to a group of people. Obviously, my opinion still stands that I will never support that because you're just pandering. You're not really supporting a community. All you're doing is just, trying to exploit them for money. And I think that's really what this whole go woke or go broke movement is really about, is just exploiting a group of people just to make profits off them. And I think that's personally messed up. But the AAA gaming companies don't really care as long as they make all the money in the world possible. And just to add a fact too, take this into account. Blackout made over $500 million in the first month. And for most of the higher up executives at Activision, they said, yeah, that's not good at all. 500 million is 500 million, guys. Like, I don't know about you guys, but as a college student, 500 million sounds really good in my bank account right now. But, for the higher ups, they just don't care because they rather have all the money in the world rather than, if they're not making enough money, then they just need to keep making more money or find more ways to get money out of you. And, it just led to more microtransactions being added. So, like Garrett mentioned, with Bungie and Destiny. Destiny originally did not have microtransactions at all, and it wasn't until Activision started pushing because they wanted more revenue, they added microtransactions into Destiny 1, and then in Destiny 2, obviously it launched with microtransactions, and obviously this has led to a lot of bad choices, I would argue, because, even though, yes, it's all cosmetic, it's still like, I don't know, Destiny never needed it. Especially when it comes to things like shaders. I think the shaders, like Destiny 1 was perfectly fine. You earn it and you keep it forever. Instead, you have to keep buying more, and I think that was messed up. But I don't know, Garrett. Do you have anything to add to either the Destiny or Overwatch part?
Not really. Overwatch, they have a system where you level up, then you unlock loot boxes. And I've tried to buy loot boxes in the past personally, and I didn't because it wouldn't let me for whatever reason. But that's besides the case. You can still purchase them, but you can still also earn them for free in the game. So there's really no point in buying them because it's not even to benefit your gameplay, it's just looks.
Yeah, right.
And that's the same for Destiny with their I don't know. I don't remember what the thing in Destiny's called. It's an in-game company.
The Eververse, that's what it's called.
Yeah, the Eververse. It's literally just for looks. Like, they don't give you any special things or anything.
Yeah, and that's what I said. Like, I think the way this should work, specifically in mainstream gaming, is when it comes to microtransactions should only be reserved for free-to-play games. I think we can come to the agreement that free-to-play games just are the only way they can actually function and actually thrive is through microtransactions. Prime example is like very popular games like Warframe. I'd argue Warframe overall has the best system when it comes to handling microtransactions because, and I'd argue Apex Legends is as well, which is actually ironic that EA actually did something right with that, which we'll get back to it. But when it comes to games like Warframe, not only can you buy the in-game currency, which you can, but you can farm the parts that people want to buy, and then you basically can get that in-game currency from other people who bought it because you're giving them stuff they want. And obviously everything in the game, you don't have to buy it. Like, say, stuff that comes out of, like, the Prime Access stuff. You don't need to buy that $80 pack. You can just farm the parts. You can just get the relics, farm the parts, and if you don't want it, then you can sell it, or farm multiple copies and sell them and make in-game currency. So, obviously, this is the most healthiest way to manage microtransactions, but obviously, AAA companies just don't care about that, and obviously, I don't know if there's any time we'll see a difference. But transitioning into the next company, Bethesda. Obviously, this is where I don't really know. I'm being honest with you guys. There's just not really much I can say to try to defend this company at this point because they just messed up so bad. Like, Fallout 76 was, I'd argue, was literally the worst game of last year. Personally, it was. That it was just a huge flop. And I think the whole approach to it, Bethesda really messed up in multiple ways. First off, I argue that the engine needs to be replaced. Like, people have been asking for this since Fallout 4. Fallout 4 is alright looking, but it needed a new engine, and obviously they're still using the same engine. I do not believe the creator engine should still be used. I believe they should just make the transition to a better engine, either, say, Unreal Engine 4 or the Frostbite or something else. But it's just sad because Bethesda was so well renowned in the gaming community, and obviously we don't know how they're turning out because obviously they still own Doom, and my opinion is Doom 2016 was amazing. It's still a recommended buy for me even today because it's still, campaign wise, is incredibly well thought out. It's well handled, it's well presented, and then the multiplayer obviously is still pretty fun. And obviously Doom Eternal's coming out soon, and that looks great. And obviously we still haven't seen anything about it, but, you know, what do you have to say about Bethesda in this one, Garrett?
Doom was a very good game, honestly. But I'm going to say their last really good game was Skyrim on original release. You know, Oblivion was... I grew up playing Oblivion, honestly. It was so much fun. I have a lot of good memories, but I would say I even have more in Skyrim just because Skyrim was the game to play whenever it came out. And they re-released it so many times, people are just starting to get tired of it. They've announced Elder Scrolls 6, and they've announced that they're still using the same engine, which after Fallout 76, people are not happy about.
Which, just adding on to it, like, I find it funny how Garrett had a lot better experience with Skyrim than I did because, if I'm being honest with you guys, I have actually never finished Skyrim. I barely got past the first mission and then I just didn't know what to do. I was just like, I can't play this game. And I think the main reason Skyrim did so well is just because the community supported it, and it's still, arguably, it's still one of the most supported games of all time because the community still keeps making mods, and because of those mods, they fixed a lot of issues in it. Obviously, the community did the same thing for Fallout 4, and they made it obviously run better and it looks better, but Fallout 76 just took a backward step on that one. They just ignored everything the community did to fix the games and just only emphasized the bad parts of Fallout 4, and I think that's what shot themselves in the foot. the whole engine and everything like that, technical aspects, obviously that was a huge blunder, and they should have just made a new engine and just kill the creator engine. It does not need to exist anymore. It's outdated technology. They can make a new engine. I know it's hard, but it's possible. Companies, or you can just use another engine that's already well established and just pay the fees for it. But obviously this is what led to Bethesda really dropping hard in the community's viewpoint, because they were so renowned for being this amazing game developer, and now they have to find a way to earn the community's trust again. Because Doom Eternal, I'll argue that it might do it depending on how good it comes out and what it's filled with, microtransactions or not, but it's going to be really hard for them to come back from Fallout 76. Like, it's a really big dump on them. Like, it's bad, guys. Like it's terrible.
It's literally like a single person who normally makes mods tries to make a Fallout game on their own, like a fan game. That's literally how it is. There's no NPCs. The glitches, like you walk 5 steps and there's a glitch. There's literally enemies running around like just models in a game like Gmod that like don't even have moving limbs. They just kind of float towards you. It's really bad.
I was just gonna say, I'd make the argument, given today's day and age, how modders are, or even creators are nowadays, I would argue they probably make an even better game. We've seen this before. We've seen instances like Sonic Mania where they made literally a better Sonic game than Sega did for the past I don't know how many years. And obviously Sonic Mania sold incredibly well, and it slapped Sega in the face. So moving on to Bungie, and this is where it's going to transition good into the end part of this episode when we talk about Bungie, because Bungie, even though I'll admit, ever since after they split from Microsoft after making Halo Reach, and they decided to work on Destiny and work on the 10-year contract with Activision, that Bungie really fell off hard. Like, I like Destiny 1. I think overall, when it comes to games that have good gunplay and mechanics, I think it was phenomenal at it. However, when it comes to story-wise and how it was at launch, it was not a good game. That if they would have just kept with the original script and just not let Activision come in last minute and change it, then I think it would have been a different story, and they wouldn't be on this considered list of bad companies. And I think Bungie would definitely be in a lot better graces with the public right now. Obviously, they fixed a lot of Destiny 1's issues near the end of its lifespan, but obviously it was too late because you had to pay for all those expansions to make the game better, and that's what pissed people off. And then with the launch of Destiny 2 looking very promising, and when it came out, it flopped. So they had to make 2 DLCs that were very lukewarm. They didn't get that many good responses from people. And obviously Forsaken was clearly their best DLC today, and it has helped the game out, but I think what's going to help them out more is the fact that they split from Activision. And this is pretty huge because they were able to split from Activision, but at the same time, they were able to keep the rights to Destiny. So this has a lot of huge implications for the gaming industry itself, because the fact that Bungie is keeping the rights to Destiny, obviously they're allowed to do whatever they want with it now, and obviously Bungie has enough money because of Destiny to finance the game. And I don't know, Garrett, what do you think could possibly happen with this?
I think it could potentially start going back to how Halo used to be, like the good old days of Halo. I'm not saying they're gonna make Destiny into Halo, or that it's gonna be as good as Halo, because I don't know if I don't know if that's possible with a different game, or how, because I played Destiny 2. I thought it was a lot of fun, but the story is very lackluster. They could have done a lot more with it for sure, but I think that with them splitting from Activision, they have a lot more freedom to do what they actually want to, and it could very well mean that Destiny becomes the next big thing.
Yeah, and I'm not onto that in the sense that, just being real with you guys, in my opinion, Destiny 2 is not going to be some holy grail video game by the end of its lifespan. Just being real with you guys, it won't. There's just not enough time, and it's already left a sour taste. Destiny 3, on the other hand, is a whole nother story, because we've seen Bungie make good stories. Like Garrett mentioned before, Halo. Halo has some of the most phenomenal storytelling of all time when it comes to video games. It had 4 of the greatest games ever made. That's Halo 1, 2, and 3, and Reach. And obviously, some people did enjoy ODST and the games in between, but obviously, Halo has a very strong culture around it because obviously it's Microsoft's baby and its poster child because it's one of the greatest gaming franchises of all time because of how much money it's made and how much community backing, which we'll get to future possibilities and talk about how that's going to go a little bit in a bit. But in my opinion, I think Destiny 3, the best choice they can do is invest a lot in the story and fix a lot of the mechanics, because that's what they're doing right now with Destiny 2 is they're mainly using it as a way to fix a lot of the mechanics in the game so that when they start working on Destiny 3, they can put all the attention to story and then the mechanics and everything could just be transferred over because now it's been perfected. And in my opinion, third time's a charm should work. So I'm going to make a prediction that I think Destiny 3 will be a hit, but it's going to be really hard for Bungie to advertise this game because they need to make sure that this game is advertised to the absolute sky. Like, this thing needs to be everywhere. Like, it needs to have big marketing campaigns for it, which EA is trying to capitalize on this Bungie split by making Anthem, but in my opinion, Anthem looks like it's going to flop. It looks beautiful, I'm not going to lie. The game looks phenomenal, but in the sense of what we're hearing and a lot of people's current reactions to it and endgame and things like that, I don't really know how this is going to work, especially given EA's track record. Obviously, EA's putting a lot of attention into Apex right now, so I don't know how Anthem's going to do, but it's made by BioWare, and BioWare has a really credible name to them, and so this is going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Obviously, I think Anthem has just a rocky hill going for it, especially given how they have like an actual chart dedicated to discussing which version of the game you're going to get, and I think that's just ludicrous. I think a video game should literally just be, I buy a copy of the game, I get everything in the game, and that's how this goes. It's not, oh, I have to buy this Ultimate Edition to get access to such and such things, or get premium access to Origin and stuff. And it's just crazy, and that's going into the possibility of the future, especially because what we're noticing is with gaming, specifically with the AAA companies, is they're transitioning into more of a service role. That it's no longer about games, and the main companies that are doing this is obviously EA. They're moving into a service role, and I'd argue that's how Activision is starting to do it as well, because they realize there's a lot of money into it. So I don't know, Garrett, what do you have to add on to that?
Well, any controversy that they stir up also gets them more like, it's basically free advertisement for them, with people talking about them, even us talking about it. It's free advertising for them, just because we're getting their names known to people, or just getting issues with them known, and then that's going to spread with more people talking about them and more. And even if you don't like their games, people are still going to buy them.
True. I think it's mainly because, like I said, Battlefield and Call of Duty still has a big drawing power in the video game world. Obviously, it's not as much as it used to be during the Modern Warfare 2 days, or say Battlefield 4 when that came out, when it was hyped up, or Bad Company and things like that. And in my opinion, it's going to be interesting to see how this goes down, especially with all the big gaming companies really losing a lot of stock recently. EA dropped hard because of the stuff with Battlefield 5, and Activision took a huge hit because investors got scared that that Black Ops 4 didn't do as well as they wanted it to be. Keep in mind, $500 million first month was not good enough. But I think overall, the main companies that probably are going to benefit the most, in my opinion, EA has a real winner on their hands with Apex. And I think if they keep supporting the game and keep advertising it heavily and keep getting more professional gamers to actually play it and stream it, I think it has a good chance of competing with Epic. Obviously, Epic already has billions in the bank because of Fortnite, and I don't really see that changing. They're still going to make tons of money. It's very popular, and the fact that they launched the Epic Game Store as well, and it's going to have exclusives on there. They're trying to compete with Steam. That's going to be another source of revenue for them, and it's going to entice more developers to go to them because obviously the cut's more fair. And overall, that even Bungie overall, I think out of the 4 companies has the biggest room to grow because they have so much potential now that they're free. The fact that they're free, they can do whatever they want. If they wanted to, they could go work for Microsoft again. Obviously, I think me and Garrett agree that's probably not going to happen.
Probably not.
Just definitely not. They've even stated on public record that they won't do it ever again after Halo Reach. Would I be surprised if they make deals with Microsoft? I wouldn't be surprised, especially that, that's money on the table, and especially given how Microsoft's approach to gaming is now in a healthy spot, and I'd argue they have the best momentum going into the next generation of consoles compared to Sony because of how bad Sony's messing up. That I think Xbox has a lot of momentum going in, especially investing a lot of money in companies and more studios to develop games and buying other studios to make games. And obviously Microsoft's approach to hardware is improving a lot now, so I wouldn't be surprised if Microsoft is the next top dog generation and we go back to the Xbox 360 days when Xbox was the number 1 console. And I don't know, obviously for Garrett it's kind of weird because he doesn't play console, so mostly PC gaming for you, but what do you think about the whole possibility with the whole Epic Game Store and Steam in your opinion?
Well, the thing with Steam is it's run by Valve, and Valve used to make games. They don't really make games anymore, so they're more focusing on the Steam aspect of their company, which still racks in a whole lot of money for them because they make a percentage off of any game that's sold on the Steam market.
True, and that's basically the point, is that Steam is basically the platform everybody buys their games off of, and Steam always has a lot of revenue and a lot of traffic going through, and it's Steam sales and things like that. And it's really interesting because Steam never really had a competitor, and because of that they've been pretty lazy on some aspects, like say like customer service. Many people complain about Steam's customer service sucking.
It's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad. Like, I'm not even lying, it sucks. And there's just some features on it that just don't work properly, and obviously developers are getting kind of pissed because the fact that the Epic Game Store is only taking 12% of their cut, and the developer can now get 88% without having to sell a specific amount of the game, is obviously huge. That's why companies like Ubisoft and are putting their games on the Epic Game Store. So this is going to be really interesting, and obviously the big thing is with Metro Exodus, but we can probably save that for another time. And yeah, I think, is there anything else you want to mention quick, Garrett? Or
well, I think we're starting to see a lot of other companies spreading to different platforms to sell their games on. Like we've seen Activision put Black Ops 4 on PC on the Blizzard Battle.net launcher instead of Steam, which I thought was an interesting move, just because Steam is so well known, and they didn't put it on Steam.
Right, and then same thing goes for like EA, where they have their own Origin launcher, and that's where they put games like Apex Legends, and that's how you have to get it instead of Steam or Anthem and things like that. So it's going to be interesting, especially because, like I said, everyone's moving into more of a service role. Obviously, when it comes to consoles, it's a little bit different because it's not really moving into service. And I just think that going into the next generation of consoles, and since we're on the topic of mainstream gaming, that Microsoft just has a lot of momentum going in, because not only are they more ahead of Sony because of the backwards compatibility, crossplay is a huge thing. Phil Spencer is arguably a better leader than anybody PlayStation has had for a long time, because Phil Spencer just understands gaming, that he just wants to focus on making good games and making sure the consumer is happy and putting Microsoft back in the good graces of the consumer, which they've done, because that's basically how he's turned around the Xbox. Obviously, the Xbox is not going to outsell the PS4 by the end of its lifespan. It just won't. But going into the next generation, they have a lot of momentum going in, buying a lot of studios, better hardware than PlayStation, and then the fact that they'll probably be the first to making streaming gaming possible and the power of the cloud, it's going to be interesting. So, I don't know. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Garrett, before we wrap it up?
Not off the top of my head, unless you want to go into Nintendo.
I don't know what we can really say about Nintendo besides, obviously the Switch is incredibly successful. The Switch is making a ton of money. It's already on pace to outselling the PS4 Well, yeah, it actually is, because it's close to outselling the Xbox One, like overall lifespan sales, and the Switch has only been out for 2 years. And obviously the Switch, I don't really think there's much I can say besides like everything that people have already repeated, like multiple Game of the Year nominees, like just phenomenal games. Obviously Smash Ultimate, huge hit, and obviously in terms of competitive fighting games, I think Smash Ultimate is definitely going to be up there, given how it's more focused in the realm of Melee a little bit.
I would say it already is. After Genesis 6, like that was the first major tournament 2 months after it was released. Obviously Super Smash Bros. Is Super Smash Bros. It's going to be popular no matter what. People love it. But with there being a major with over 3,000 competitors after 2 months of the game being out, I think that is a huge signifier that Nintendo's only going to make or be more in the competitive scene than they are now.
Obviously, and Nintendo's fully behind it, especially that they got rid of the Nintendo creator program, so now anybody can stream the game or put videos on it on YouTube without any issues. So that's why people like Zero, well-known Smash player, can now post all videos about Smash Bros. Whenever he wants on YouTube and get monetized for it. So I think Nintendo's realizing that, advertising is advertising, and they want people playing their game. And obviously Smash Bros. Is always going to be bringing eyes when it comes to fighting games, or even E3, because a lot of eyes are on Nintendo this year for E3, especially since Sony's not going to be attending E3. Like I said, Sony's messing up hardcore. Microsoft is probably going to steal the stage. Will we see anything related to the next Xbox? Probably not. I wouldn't be surprised if they at least give us a name, but Nintendo definitely has a lot to show off. They could either, obviously, people want to know this next Smash Bros. Character that's very popular. We got Joker from Persona 5, a character from a PlayStation game exclusive. So, and then obviously any news related to Metro Prime 4 would be great. Anything related to Bayonetta 3 that we haven't seen a lot of in a long time, so we don't know how far production is. I honestly think Bayonetta 3 might be the big game coming out of Nintendo this year, or maybe, well, actually no, it isn't. We know it's the next Pokemon game. Who knows? We actually might see something for the next Pokemon game. And people are really happy for the next mainstream Pokemon game. Obviously, Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu was a casual game, and it was really popular. Obviously, the hardcore Pokemon fans want the mainstream game for competitive battling, and I don't blame them, because this will be the first mainstream game on a Switch, and we know it's coming. They already announced that it will be ready this year, so I would not be surprised in June if we see something related to it. But I think that's pretty much it, guys. I don't think we have anything else to talk about. Anything you want to say, Garrett?
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem, man. I really just appreciate having you on, because obviously first time having a guest, and I think it just makes the conversation flow a little bit easier. Obviously, guys, I'm being real with you. We did not get the best room to do the editing and everything and recording the episode, because some of the rooms are already taken, so we just got to work with what we got. And yeah, obviously I'm going to leave you guys with this in regards to the Patreon page, that I adjusted the backer system, especially because one of my friends recommended that I adjusted it, especially since I'm still growing and I'm still newer to this whole podcasting scene. That obviously I toned down the Patreon thing and made it so that you only need to start being, in order to be a backer of the show, it's only $2 to start. Obviously, we already have a backer, and overall my goal for the Patreon page is to eventually reach 10 backers by the end of the year. Do I think I'll reach it? Maybe, who knows? I don't have control over that. It's you guys, because you're the ones that are choosing to support the show. But anyways, guys, I'm going to leave you guys with that. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Obviously, thank you, Garrett, for coming on the show. Definitely, I would love to have you on again. And obviously, because now that we're having guests, I think this is going to be a lot more interesting conversations from going on. And yeah, I'm just going to leave you guys with that. Have yourselves a wonderful week, guys. I love you guys to death. Bye.